Guys, you ever have one of those days where you just feel like ripping off your grandma's tablecloth and wearing it like a shirt? That's me today. It's also a good day because I am reviewing the 6-hour P365 XL. XL for extra large. Yes, this thing is a little bit bigger than the old P365. Remember that guy? Let's not dig all that up just yet. I'm sure SIG wants to put that behind them because they did fix it, by the way. So anyway, this gun is considerably bigger. We're talking about concealed carry pistols, so anytime you make small incremental changes, it's kind of big changes because from a concealable standpoint, you always are conscious of that and wondering, am I making the right decision by moving up or down in size, things of that nature. I got to tell you that there's a lot of things about this P365 XL that I really like. I liked the old one, to be honest with you, before it was stolen from me, but I do like this XL because of a couple of things. Number one, it does have a longer slide to it. That gives you a longer sight radius. I do believe that's going to equate to some more accurate shots, although that I am of the strong opinion that most of the concealable type guns that you're gonna have out there, we're not sharpshooting with these guys. We're not precision shooting with them. In many cases, it's for self-defense purposes. This is the point and shoot gun. It's great to have good night sights on it, but in a high stress situation, you're really not gonna be utilizing those sights. But nevertheless, it's nice to have those things. You know what I mean? If you're paying this much money for a pistol, you want to have all the bells and whistles that would normally come, so you don't have to do all these aftermarket upgrades like you would normally do. So again, the longer slide is nice. I do think that's a good thing. The little bit extra mass is going to tame that recoil a little bit, not a ton, but again, we're talking about a 9mm, so adding a little bit extra weight out front is always going to lower that and get your follow-up shot a little bit faster and a little bit more accurate. I like the sights on this gun. Again, the front night sights are really nice. They're very highly visible. I also like the fact that it's got this extended shelf on the back. I talk about that a lot, and a lot of times people ask me, what do you mean by that? What's the benefit of that? You know, if you have a damaged or a wounded support hand in a stressful situation where you're being attacked, you know, you can always charge this thing on a tabletop, on your belt. Something like that is going to be very useful if you don't have your support hand to charge that slide, maybe to either put a new magazine in there and charge that slide, or to try to clear a malfunction or a misfeed, a stovepipe or something like that. So it's nice that they have that. To me, that is a must. From a sight standpoint, that's more utilitarian than it is useful from an aiming standpoint. I like the fact that I can utilize that and put that to good use in a stressful situation. Now, whether or not you can pull it off, who knows? You got to have a decent surface and all that, but nevertheless, it does work. It does have the cutout there for the red dot sight. This one is a little bit unique. You actually go up underneath it inside the slide and take some screws out in order to put that red dot on there. But nevertheless, very, very cool. To my knowledge right now, I think it's utilizing, I was told, I think a Delta point by Leupold it can use, but also obviously one of the new Romeos or one of the new red dots that SIG has out. I think that it's made for this. It's got that nitride finish. Obviously, that's going to help in terms of rusting. Always, a lot of the newer guns are coming out with that these days. The texturing is just as nice as the old P365. I like that a fact that it's not overly aggressive, but it gives you just enough grip to be able to maintain control in a sweaty or a wet situation, or even with gloves. It's going to still give you some positive traction on that thing. The flat trigger, that's nice to me. I like the flat triggers on these guns. I know that's kind of a trendy thing right now, but I'm a big fan of flat triggers. Maybe because I'm an old 1911 shooter in USPSA. But I like the feel of a flat trigger. I feel like once my finger comes to a rest, regardless of wherever it comes to a rest on that flat trigger, it's not moving. Whereas whenever you get inside some of these curves of these curved triggers, I feel like my finger is rolling a little bit. I feel like it's not as positive of a pullback. Again, I feel like my finger's almost searching for a place to rest within that curve and that roll. Hey, if it's mental, that's fine. I tell you guys all the time that whatever suits you mentally and makes you comfortable in your mind when you are shooting or operating a pistol, firearm of any nature, that's the go-to guy right there. If it puts you at ease and it makes you feel better, then that's what you want to go with. And to me, a flat trigger puts me more at ease. I feel like I have a more comfortable trigger pull, a more straight back trigger pull, and a more consistent trigger pull on a flat trigger. Nevertheless, it feels good. It's got a great pull to it. You'll find that these two pistols are remarkably similar, actually. The frames are the exact same length from front to back. So when we talk about a lot of the parts being interchangeable, you can actually swap these parts out if you so desire. Now, the magazines, not so much. The smaller magazines, obviously, on the P365 standard issue are not going to fit the XL because the XL has that longer magwell area. The magwell area is flared. Very slight flare, but that's still going to aid in a very positive lockup whenever you're trying to find that magwell and insert that, that magazine. So I like that. You can purchase these aftermarket 6-hour magazines. You might have to either hock one of your children or maybe one of your appendages because they're about 45 bucks a pop in the store. So yeah, they're not cheap. The magazines are a little pricey, but it will bump you up to 15 rounds. The standard magazine that comes with this particular XL model is a 12 rounder, which is 2 more than the flush fit 10 rounder that's on the standard P365. From a shooting standpoint, had no problem shooting this thing. I felt like the front end of it laid down a little bit more consistently. Maybe that was a conscious effort on my part. You know, I try to say this a lot. We as humans manipulate these guns more than anything. It's usually not the gun being the issue, but I did feel like I was able to keep the muzzle down a little bit more. My follow-up shot was a little bit faster and more accurate. But again, sometimes that's psychological and I might be gripping it a little bit harder. But I did find that the muzzle didn't seem to pop as much as it did with that P365 standard length issue. All in all, guys, the P365 XL, it's a fun gun to shoot. I do like the fact that I have a little bit more to hold on to down here. I think psychologically, again, I'll go back to that. Sometimes we think we're getting a little bit more leverage. I know from a physics standpoint, this extended grip and as well as the actual magazine poking out a little bit further is going to give you a little bit more for your hand to grip hold of. So I know from a physics standpoint, there is some truth to that. But I think in many cases, again, going back to that mental issue, I think in many cases we convince ourselves that we need that and that we feel more confident whenever we're holding a pistol that has more real estate down here. And if that's the case, again, I'll say it again, if it makes you feel better and you feel more confident utilizing the gun, then that's probably what you want to have. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that you're right or you're wrong or that you're a sissy because you need that. It just means that you feel like the leverage that you gain and the advantage you have right there puts you in the positive. And we definitely want to be able to utilize these guns as efficiently and safely as we can in the event we have to protect ourselves and our families. Now, we'll say this. I did notice the brass. I looked at the brass between the old P365 and the P365 XL. Now, the P365 that I'm shooting here is one of my friends, and it's a very early edition of the P365, the standard one, while they had all of that primer drag on the primers. They fixed that. SIG did. There was a number of things that SIG did, and that was one of the things that was the biggest complaint they had. There's a lot of guys out there having issues with them. Again, SIG remedied that. They did listen, they did fix that. You'll notice by my primers here that I have, the primer on the right is the primer from the XL, and the primer on the left is the primer from the 365 standard, the original one. You'll notice a distinct difference on these primers. These are both the exact same ammunition, and I just fired both of these pistols. Both of these casings are what I just gathered, and there is no doubt, no question whatsoever, that SIG did some work to make sure that that primer was not scarred up and marred, so to speak, and that firing pin was not dragging across those primers and disrupting anything as far as the cycling of the firearm. So kudos to SIG for fixing that. I'd try one. I would get one. I still think the fact that SIG was able to engineer and manufacture a metal walled magazine, not polymer on the outside and metal on the inside like Glock, the fact that they did simply a metal walled magazine allows them to be pretty revolutionary in this and make such a high capacity magazine. This pistol is as narrow as all these single stacks out there that unfortunately have not tamed the fact that they need to make their magazines a little bit more innovative. SIG figured it out. They were able to apply it in the 365 and they've carried it over to the XL. And to me, you've got a gun that is very easy to conceal and it holds 15 rounds right here. Now, make no mistake, this portion of the pistol, look, unless you're a midget, my apologies to the small people out there, whatever I'm supposed to call them, but unless you're a midget, this is the easy part to conceal. That's not the problem. It's this right here. So let's remember that we're kind of taking a step backwards whenever we add this on there and extend that grip because now we're making it a little bit harder to conceal on our side. So we do have to be careful that we don't put these magazines out there that are going to stick out here just so that we can brag that we have more capacity.